introduce you to some of these. Oh, excuse me. To briefly introduce you to some of the key accessibility features in Microsoft PowerPoint. For a resource, we're going to be using actually several resources. The first is the Course Accessibility Checklist, which you can find at the bottom of the CTE Digital Accessibility page. And I'm also going to have Mitchell put a link to that in the chat. In addition, there is an accessibility cheat sheet. There's one version for Windows, and then there's one version for Mac. For today's presentation, I will be using a Mac. So this is what you would be seeing through a Mac. If you do have a Windows, you might want to get that accessibility cheat sheet for Windows and follow along. Mitchell, were you able to put that in the chat for me?
I'm
Okay.
grabbing it right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, I will go ahead and start. So today what I'm going to be doing is walking through this demo presentation. This is a PowerPoint presentation which has issues that may be coming up on your end as needing accessibility modifications. So what's in this demo is incorrect, and we're going to be working on fixing it. So first, one of the things that's a quick tip whenever you're using PowerPoint you want to start off with a good accessibility rating or to start off with good accessibility practices, is that whenever you add a slide, you go up here to the top where you have new slide and you can hit layout or you can hit the little button next to it. And for some reason, it's not working on mine. Let me pull it up. Um, Let's see. There we go. So whenever you hit the layout button, any of these pre-made layouts are automatically set up for accessibility. And so, for instance, if we added, let's see, if we move a new slide in here, it's already set up where this would be the title of the slide and this would be where you'd add text. The reading order is set, etc. So that's one quick way for you to automatically start off on the right foot. So I am going to delete this one since this was not one that we're going to use today. So that was a quick tip. Um, the first thing you can do if you've already got a PowerPoint is that you can run the accessibility checker. And what you would do for that is there are two ways that you can access that. You can go up here to review, or you can go into the top toolbar where you will see tools. And so I'm going to go up here to review. And then over here to the left, you see accessibility to check accessibility. So when you click this, you see two new things. To the right, you see a list of things that are not meeting the current accessibility check. Across the top, you see a list of or a menu of icons that can help you fix some of these accessibility issues. So the first one we're going to look at here, if we look through this list, there's missing alt text, there's missing slide title, duplicate slide title, etc. So we're going to start with looking at these slide titles. Now, the first thing it says is that there's something missing a slide title. So we click on that, and it will take us to one that's missing a slide title. And so that one is down here, and you see, this is maybe if you've deleted everything on it, if you've got a picture and you need to add a title to it, um, you can go up here to slide title. And then there's an easy way to add a slide title to this. And then we will just call this one testing slide title. And so now it has a title there. Now, if we go over here, that has been checked off. So we know we've got that set. Under here, there says there's another one that has a duplicate slide title. So with these two here, they have the same title. Even though the case is different, they do have the same title. We always want to have a separate title for each slide because when people use screen readers, they can flip through the slides based on the title. So if there are two titles with the same name, excuse me, two slides with the same name, that makes it much more difficult for screen readers. So for these two, we might, for instance, change this title here and say, okay, I'm looking at this list, types of tests, because that's what this list looks like it's describing. So then I can go to the second one and then I can click here and I can change this title as well. Now, this is one way to switch titles. There's also a different way to switch titles. And by that, what you can do is you can go to your view up here at the top and you can choose the outline view. And if you click there, you see all of your slides laid out here. And so what you can do is go down to slide titles and you can change it here as well. So we can say um, creating tests. And so now you've got a title there. So we see over here to the right, duplicate slide title is corrected. So some tips is that you want to make sure that everyone uses a different one. And to think about it, slide titles are very similar to heading one in Word. If you went to the Word workshop last week, heading one would be the same thing as a slide title. And so that way you do have the table of contents ready for the reading materials. Excuse me, the reading screen reader. Another thing with the titles is that you want to avoid, excuse me, you want to make sure you're using a layout that has a title box. And so, for instance, if we go back to this accessibility, you can go, now that we've opened it, you can go up here at the top, but you can also go to review and check accessibility to get this menu. If, for instance, this is not a title, you can go up here to this menu and see slide title, and you can since this one's already a slide title, you can edit it. But if this were not there, you could create it or you could change it to a slide title. Before I go on, I just want to check really quick to make sure there's no questions about this. You can ask a brief question. We'll have more time at the end, but I just want to make sure everything was clear here that I have started with. Okay, I'm gonna let's see. I'm gonna go down here to the bottom.
So we do have a question from Kelly Fleming. Do all
Sure.
of my slides need to have titles? And you can create a hidden title, can't you?
Hmm. Yes. And so if you wanted to create a hidden title, we can go back down to where I tried this one here. And so I added this title here. If we wanted to do a slide title and we wanted to create one, we can, since there's nothing there, add a hidden slide title. So it appears outside, so we see it. Testing hidden, oops, testing hidden title. So it does not appear on your slide itself, but if we look over here in the outline, it is here for part of your outline so that you can see how it works.
Right. And
Oh,
the reason there for having that title would be the screen reader would still want to know what content is on that slide if someone were using a screen reader.
yes.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and go on now. I'm going to go back to a normal view, which puts the slides back over here. And so I'm going to look over here, and the next thing I see is missing alt text up here at the top. So I'm going to click there and see what it's telling me. So when something is missing alt text, that means that there is nothing there for a screen reader to read, but there's an object there. So one that frequently pops up if you're getting this error is that there's the pesky little box in the background that comes up there sometimes when it wants you to add a word or add something, and you just work over it. You don't even think about it. But even if it's empty, this counts as something that needs to have either alt text or needs to be deleted. So it still wants to put it back there. So let's see. Come on. Get here. Well, it's not letting us do this. So for now, There we go. So now it's deleted. Is where we have an image, but this is not a decorative image. This is an image with information that we need to portray to students. And I'll just say for a moment, my internet connection is saying that it is going slow, so I'm going to turn off my video, but my screen share will still be on. Okay, so what we see here is a image that needs to be described, um, and there's no text there. So whenever somebody is using a screen reader, they see nothing here. They do not get the information that you're wanting them to get. What we can do is we can go over here to the missing alt text. You have the option to enter an image description here, to generate a description, or to mark as decorative. Now, marking as decorative means that it is just a picture that's there to look pretty. So, for instance, if this red square up here or rectangle up here counted as an image, you could just mark it as decorative and it would not need any kind of further alt text. But this one is important. So, what I can do is I can generate a description using AI, but I warn you, it's not very good. It's not going to get across what this actually is. So instead, I've already written down here what I want to use. So then when I come over here, I can add that text. So the way I describe this, a screenshot of a search box showing how to select categories and keywords. On the bottom line to the right, a button entitled Choose from Existing is emphasized. And so then I save that. And now when someone's using a screen reader, it will read that information so that they know what was depicted by this image. So now we go on to the next one, and it's telling us that this one here, a little arrow, is not tagged. So with this arrow, we can mark this as decorative because for this one here, which should be missing alt text, and if you don't know, you can always go here, right click, and then view alt text. So what I want to do is that one actually comes down here. I think I might have put that one in the wrong one. Um, so what I've done here is say an arrow points to a pop-up. So that's how I'm able to use that arrow as decorative because I can say an arrow points to this pop-up and then I describe it. So let me go to this one. And I had put that one in the wrong one. Click it, enter, and we're good to go. So if we go back to the accessibility assistant, we only have one that's missing alt text. We click there, it's this one, same thing, you would enter what this is describing, a menu bar with where you can browse criteria, etc. You would enter that, and then you can move on. Now, one thing to note whenever you're using these PowerPoint slides, there's nothing in the accessibility checker that mentioned about color contrast. In fact, it says color and contrast is okay. But when we look at the text color of this here, there is not very much contrast in this block from the background. And one way you can check that is if you go to the top menu bar and inspect without color. If you click on it, it's still very difficult to read. So what we can do is highlight it and simply make it another color, a font color of white. Now we see it's very clear to read. So next, we have done our alt text. We have done all of our title slides. One thing remains here, and that is check reading order. Reading order is the way that the screen reader would read the things on the screen. So, for instance, we're checking this screen reader. We can verify the reading order, and we see that the first thing that it's going to read is picture 4. An arrow points to blah, blah, blah. But that is not the thing we want it to read first. What we want it to read first is a reading order and alternative text. So, in order to fix that, we would simply move this one to the top. So, the first thing it is going to read is reading order and alternative text. The second thing we want it to read, this, and when we click on it, over to the right, that is highlighted. So we want that to be second. So we select it and move it up. And lastly, the third thing is this here. Now, the arrow is not showing up here because we had earlier marked that as decorative, so it will not appear in the reading order. So if we go back to the accessibility, there's still one missing alt text. That's the one I will generate a description for, just to save us some time. So then if we go back, everything passes except that one. Approve. Looks good, no issues found. So, excuse me. So those are the basic ways that we can look at accessibility here, um, and that we can fix any accessibility issues that come up or that are flagged whenever we run an accessibility check. These are the best practices, and they also are um, they're very good to look to do before you move anything into Blackboard. Whenever you're doing the tests in Blackboard, if these are not done first, Blackboard is going to ask you to go back into the original file and update all of these things in PowerPoint. Once we're done, we do that accessibility checker again, unless it's already here on the side, and we want to get a looks good, no issues found. Now we're going to have some open work time and some questions. So I want to open the floor up to anybody who wants to ask anything. You're welcome to work on your own materials and practice. You can do this on your own, or you can stay here a bit and ask questions. I hope, yes, I see Michelle Hardy has raised her hand. Yes.
So I know that this is something that also applies to Word and Excel, but do y'all happen, because I can't find them, do y'all have the websites for the colors that you can include to deal with color blindness? Um, if you, I know that there are certain slide color combinations that do and don't work. And I was wondering if y'all happen to have that link or not.
I do not,
Okay.
excuse me, but if someone else does, that would be very valuable for us to be able to circulate. So if you do have this link, please add it to the chat or email that to us.
Yes, that is exactly it. So Lylan put it into the chats. Awesome.
Ah, perfect.
Love it.
And
Okay, so I see a question here. Would these accessibility checks and issues transfer when exported as a PDF? That is a very good question. Sometimes it depends on how you export it. But we do have a program that's coming up, excuse me, a workshop that's coming up that will exclusively discuss PDFs and how to ensure that those are accessible as well. And that will cover part of, making sure that they're accessible from the originals. So for this one, we're just focusing on while it's in the PowerPoint presentation, how to make it accessible. But there is another workshop that can answer your question.
right, and can I add on to that,
Of
Kristen?
course, yeah.
Yeah, if you do the reading order and the titles and everything here, those are going to show up as tags in the PDF. And so you'll want to make those corrections here before exporting. But like Kristen said, there is a dedicated presentation on PDFs coming up. Um, no problem. And then you have a new question in the chat from Blair Kristen. When you create tables in Excel, since it is populated by the PowerPoint program, are they also automatically accessible?
I will be honest, that is not one that I am familiar with. Um, my gut says that if you do it correctly in Excel, that it would transfer to the PowerPoint program, but I cannot verify that. I am not sure. Mitchell, do you know?
I know how to verify. So you can go into the table settings and make sure that the headings or the header row is correctly clicked. But if it is set up in PowerPoint, it might, I mean, from Excel, it might transfer over. So I would still verify by going into the table settings and checking there. Thank you,
Yes.
Michelle. Sorry.
And if you see this menu at the top, whenever you have a table, it does include an accessibility inserting a header row here. So that would be part of the accessibility for a table. Okay. You like to make the pretty presentations. Is having a lot of decorative elements in a presentation make it less accessible? I am right there with you, and yes, it does. One of the ways around this is by clicking things as decorative, but for instance, a lot of times I use Canva and then move it over to PowerPoint. And while I'm doing the accessibility check in PowerPoint, all of the little doodles, all of the little blocks and pieces in the background, each one of those has to be marked as decorative. And that way it would not appear for the screen readers, as we saw, because anything marked as decorative is left out. So it's a lot of work on your end. And that's just a decision you have to make if that's worth the work on your end. Mitchell, do you know if there's any other concern beyond just having to mark it as decorative? Is there another reason that you might not want to use extra stuff?
Um, it would just be whenever you make sh like if you're going to use that type of content, you would want there to like if your images shouldn't communicate core content for understanding the presentation. So for example, if you're using a very fancy picture of somebody running to explain how to run, then you would still want to provide alt text for that. But it would just you would just want to ensure that those images are not communicating core concepts integral to the presentation. And then Michelle has a question about like alt text, and I'm just going to put a link to the Digital Accessibility Office's best practices for alternative text.
Hmm. Excuse me. And in terms of how detailed does the picture description need to be? I think a lot of that depends on the weight that you're wanting that picture to carry. So if you have an image of, a weather cycle and it's got text and it's got images, and the students are meant to visually understand that from the picture, you're going to need either to describe that in the alt text, or you could include that the picture itself is a picture of the weather cycle. And then in the notes, I believe this is right, Mitchell, but in the notes, you can include the more detailed explanation of what it is showing.
Right, the alt text descriptions are really going to depend on what the image is, and if it is a very complicated image, you might actually want a long text, like you said, that is either underneath or accompanying the image in some way.
Okay, I see a question about animations. Typically, animations are not very accessible. Um, but I'm not, Mitchell, would it be better to use separate slides that accomplish it, or to, what would you think about that?
I feel that as far as the presentation goes, having minimal animations would be most effective or using simple animations. I don't think that the screen reader, so if it's someone that's using an assistive technology, like reads the animations to them.
Yeah, that's one we can look into. I'm not
Right.
familiar with that. I know it's better to use fewer, but I'm not sure how the screen reader responds to it. So we'll look into that. Do the notes get included as well? If I use the notes for references, should I erase them when I share them? That depends on how you're sharing them. So whenever you share or export, you should be able to, and I've got all of the Zoom things getting in the way here. Hold on one second. Trying to move the little window. There we go. So whenever I share or save as, you can, um, or export, you can decide how you want it to include, what you want it to include. Um, we did it as A, I believe it has to be, well, it's not doing it that way. Um, share, share presentation. It's still giving me a message. But you do have the option of whether you send the notes or whether you just send the presentation. If you are concerned about it, I would recommend taking any sensitive notes or anything you don't want them to read, either out of the notes or to hide those so that that way you don't even have to worry about it. But a lot of times using the notes is really good to show people or to describe things that people may not see in the images or that clarify anything in the slides. And I'm hoping these are answering your questions. If they're not answering your questions, let us know and we will definitely revisit. Okay, is there something more particular one should do if we're displaying graphs, plots, aside from alt text describing the graphs, plots? That leads back to what Mitchell and I were talking about with the alt text versus long text. You do want to have a description of what the image represents. So the alt text doesn't necessarily need to have all of that information. It can be something short, just a brief description. And then in the notes, you would have a much longer description, or you can have that as text on the slide, even though we typically try to use as little text as possible on a slide. But you would want to explain if it was valuable enough for you to put within the PowerPoint, you want to explain what it represents to your students.
And we do have just 1 minute left.
Oh, that went fast.
I know. Uh, we might have time for one more question, like a very quick question. Yeah, perfect question. Thank you, Michaela. This is recorded, and we are working on editing and posting the videos of the previous two webinars. Um, just as a note, oh, we have one more from Michael. Is it acceptable practice to create parallel presentations, one for those in accessibilities, bells and whistles for those who do not need those features? Um, I really like that question. What I used to do whenever developing my PowerPoint presentations is I made everything in a plain text document, and so there was always just a straight version of the text that somebody that needed a screen reader would easily be able to navigate. But I think with the DOJ's final order, anything that's hosted on the USC site or resources has to be digitally accessible itself, but there's more information on that from the Digital Accessibility Office. But I use it as a general practice to have like a plain text version. And now we're migrating into some teaching questions. Um, Kristen, is it okay if I go ahead and close this out just because we're at time?
Um, let me do this last one, if you
Okay.
don't mind.
Yeah.
Um, I see regarding graphs, when you say explain, Can that mean verbally explained in class but not explained on the site itself? Um, we would recommend both, simply because if you are handing out the slideshow as a resource for students, you want that resource to be something that they can use regardless of what they might need it for. It's very similar to if you're using a presentation and you're showing it on the screen, that we might use captions. So, what I would recommend is having that explanation on it. That would be in more detail for the students within the notes. Okay, there you go, Mitchell. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank y'all so much for attending. If you could please, you're going to receive a survey for this presentation. Please, please, please complete that survey. We are redoing these presentations in the spring, and they're going to be like offered through April. Any feedback would be great. And this is also our first step into micro learning. So if you have general feedback about micro learning as well, your feedback would be appreciated. But thank you, Kristen.
Thanks. See everybody later.